I'm not a fan of white people asking if they can touch my hair.
Mm-hmm.
But then I'm not a fan of men asking me, is my hair real? You know what I'm saying? So everybody pisses me off when it comes to my hair. So I'm not discriminatory in that fact. But my question is, how do you feel when people ask you questions based on your race? And I'll go to you, Sita.
It depends on the motivation behind the question, because we can't live in an environment where it's not okay to be curious. I teach children, and I always make an effort to tell them when they do speak up, great question, and follow it up, even if it is something that might seem insignificant or frivolous to somebody else.
Mm-hmm.
I also think that it lets you know who you're dealing with off the bat. For example, if I'm on a dating app and someone has a question about my hair, I immediately understand what I'm being confronted with and what sort of circumstance might follow. And I'm happy to answer it, but it's the motivation behind the question.
And well, that sounds like you've had an experience with that. So I don't really necessarily understand what you're saying. Can you explain? Can you be more specific about that?
Sure. I think that it's depending on what an image of me looks like. I am somebody who is constantly just taken as a white person, and not to Black folk, but
white people don't mistake you for Black. White people mistake you for white, and Black people don't mistake you at all.
No, they know exactly what's going on, and especially because I grew up in New York City, you know, it's a melting pot. We have a lot of different ethnicities mixing together, so we're more easily confronted with it. But I have a lot of men, for example, just on the dating app spectrum, because that's how we're dating these days, right? And they present a lot of questions and a lot of curiosity towards me. What are you? And I can tell pretty quickly whether the question is coming from a space of, I need to find out because I feel fear, and I need to know what you are so that I can quantify and qualify you. You know, that great Bob Dylan line, you see somebody naked and you say, who is that man? They need to know, and it helps them feel secure. Okay, and then we can move forward.
Or so I can adjust my conversation.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. I'm not a fan of the "what are you" questions. How do you feel about that? Like the "what are you"?
I have to answer it so much that I feel like I've become programmed to it. I constantly have to respond to that because I was an actor for several years. And so casting directors or my manager would have to tell them before I came in the room. And even now, all the time. I had an exchange with my neighbor where I had to
go for it.
It was rough. It was rough, you know? And I had to say, you know, I'm going to stop you right there. I'm half Black. My mother's Black. And, you know, it does get sensitive, but I have to understand where I start and stop and that person begins, because I can't dive in with them into their insecurities and into their trauma and worry. I got to stay with me.
Yeah. Teron.
I have learned very early on that it's not my responsibility to teach you or educate you on anything that has to do with race or racism. However, I've taken it upon myself to make it my duty because of who I am as a person. So I'm a firm believer of educate, do not humiliate. And I have patient conversations. And a lot of times we all on this chat right now know they can be very trying. They try your patience. However, I do my best to be patient and explain, especially because I come from two very unique cultural backgrounds that usually do not mix, homogenous Persian, Iranian culture and Black culture, which are some of the most unique experiences on earth. So I get this question from everybody. I think my dad asked me one time, what are you mixed with again? Like, I've gotten this question a lot. And I have to explain. I had to tell my dad I was Black when I was like 14. It was like coming out of the closet. I had to explain it to him.
I'm lost, Teron. How are you explaining your dad? What are you?
My dad is the Persian one. And sometimes, even as my father, he still had questions where I had to educate him on what is appropriate and inappropriate. That happens. And it's not just for my father. I had to do the same thing with my mother. I've done the same thing with my grandparents. One of my grandparents asked me when the next attack was. You know, I mean, this is something that comes up, but it's something where I've decided I can't allow it to be normalized. I feel like Sita, how she's an educator, and I feel like that as well. And I don't have to do this. I get to do this. So I enjoy being able to educate people as much as possible.
But let me ask you this. If you have to educate your mother and your father, and I'm assuming biological mother and father.
Yes.
Okay. If you have to educate them, then my question becomes, who educated you?
That's the thing. You learn a lot by educating yourself. Experience is the best teacher. So I've had a lot of experience. And on top of that, I was provided two parents who were very proud of their cultural heritage and encouraged me to learn about the other side of my cultural heritage as well. So that encouragement allowed me a lot of freedom to explore and examine. And I learned very early on in my life to be proud of who I am. Because when I was young, you know, we know about all the mixed people now. Drake is everyone. But when I was growing up, just like when Drake was growing up, being mixed was not common. Being mixed was less than 2% of America's population. And now at its height, we're at possibly 5%. So as much as we're accustomed to it, it's because of people who were able to express and explain and normalize it to everyone. But that doesn't mean we still don't have to educate.
Yeah. Okay. I feel you. And Ami and Justin, is it wrong to ask the questions? Are the questions wrong? Are they offensive? Because obviously, and it amazes me that we're in 2020 and couples who are from different cultures, still get stared at, still get questioned, and people still don't get it. So I have to ask you, do you feel like it's an invasion or wrong when people question your relationship?
I can speak from this point of view, is that it all depends on, I think, your motives. I've always had, I think, a very earnest approach with people. And I think years ago when I started dating outside of my race, women, Latino women, Black women, I think they really appreciated when I would ask them things like, you know, why have you never, dated outside of your race? Or like, why do people use these stereotypes? Or like, why are there differences? And I would have these great conversations and I'd be very earnest about it. And I think beneath earnestness is caring. And if you care and you're curious, then people can see that. And if your motives are pure, then that will show. And otherwise, I don't think it is appropriate, because you are being defensive or you're coming at it from a different angle, which I don't think would be good. But that's from my side.
Yeah. It's interesting because, as you said, in 2020, people still look at people who are biracial or who are interracial relationships almost with a side eye. I'm like, I thought we were a little bit past this. I thought we're trying to move past this at least. But being a Black woman, especially in this times that we're in right now, you get the questions of, how can you be pro-Black, but you're dating, outside of your race? Or how can you, what do you guys have in common? Or how do you talk? And I'm like, well, we're still two people, and the commonality is beneath what we look like. And that's what I think, is the biggest thing. When people ask earnestly, like people have asked me that question, I've answered honestly. If I know you're truly just wondering, like, because for them, they can't imagine dating outside of their race because they're so pro-Black. So I try to explain, I absolutely love who I am. I've never tried to change who I am. I love the color I am, but I'm also, in my mind, a very open-minded person. So I can look at somebody else and not look at them just for their color or judge on that basis and have open conversation. So I think it's just, as people, the society needs to start progressing. I think that's, I guess, partially our job as people who are in the forefront of to be open to talk to people. If they have a question, as long as it's not aggressive, it's not disrespectful, I will always answer the question.
Yeah, go ahead, Justin.
On Instagram the other day, I made a video about this topic, and there was a lot of comments, and somebody said, a Black woman said, "We're tired of answering questions. We don't want to educate anyone anymore." My response to that was, well, how can you truly forgive if people really come in to you and they really want to know and they really are concerned and they care, and you dismiss that person? Then you really you've really neglected a chance to really forgive, because this person has come at you with really pure motives. And because I was thinking about myself in that case, like when I used to talk to people, like, why are there conflicts between certain people?
So let me explain that. Let me help you feel that a little bit. The reason why Black people today are a little bit agitated and irritated with explaining and don't want to explain anymore is because we are thinking that the questions and the line of questioning in regards to racism is coming from an unpure place at this point. Because we've seen in your history books how we have been enslaved and entrapped in a world that has been unjust to us. And for you to say, now explain to me again why you mad, or explain to me again how the world treats you, when it's been clear and evident for decades, even centuries, how we have been treated. And it's not an opinion anymore at this point. It's factual and it's documented. And so I think that Black people are at a point to where they're like, oh my God, I don't want to explain to another white person how the fuck I feel.
It gets frustrating. It does get frustrating. That's why I began and prefaced it with, it's not my responsibility. Everybody has Google, and there are great sources out there that you can educate yourself. So I just disagree with Justin when you pointed out to someone that they should. It's not should. With me, it was a choice that I made. So it was a personal decision. And I think Sita, it was the same.
Yeah, I believe the power of education is invaluable. And if people don't empower themselves to become educated, not only knowledge observed and obtained through reading, but through experiential understanding, compassion, empathy, then you don't stand a fucking chance in this world. You need to crack a book, because we are moving at such a phenomenal pace of awareness, of realization.
We are.
Of disregarding ignorance, bringing truth to the foreground.
At least we're trying to. At least we're trying to.
We're trying. But you know what? I think the proof is in the pudding. And I think as difficult as these times are, I've seen some good pudding.
And I want to say to Justin, because my initial question was, are you offended by questions? And in that same vein, he said that when he asks questions, Black people are offended that he's asking questions and that they don't want to give him knowledge.
Let me be very clear. Let me clarify this. No, my video was about mistakes that I'd made in the past and how I educated myself. I want to be very clear that I'm a history major and a lot of African history. So I'm not talking about myself. I'm talking about
people in the comments.
Right, I'm talking about people in the comments.
When I said, people who are genuine.
So when I said, and in the video is there, when I said basically the mistakes I made, I chose to educate myself. I chose to rectify. I chose to fix the situation. And then some people in the comments, I don't know where it came from, basically like, it was like, I'm glad you did that, but we're tired of helping other white people.
Got you.
Okay, so we're back with you, Justin. We're back with you. We're back on Team Justin, because
No, but still, it contradicts the very thing that I said that pisses me off, which is when I started, I said I hate when people say, you know Jane, and I say no, and they, you don't know Jane? How come you don't know Jane? But then in the same vein, as we're sitting here talking, I'm realizing Black people don't want to give that knowledge to white people at this juncture of the game.